Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The moon hung low over the Scottish Highlands, casting a silver light upon the rolling hills. Mist coiled through the heather, and the distant cry of some unseen creature echoed across the valley. It was a night when magic stirred faintly in the air, like the whisper of an old spell half-remembered. Far below that haunted light, a narrow road wound its way toward a cluster of cottages. One of them, small and crooked, belonged to a wizard who was trying, as best he could, to live an ordinary life. Harry Potter stood by the window, his hand resting on the sill, watching the faint shimmer of mist over the fields. The clock on the mantel struck midnight. He'd been home for only an hour since returning from another long day at the ministry. Ginny had gone to bed early, their children sleeping soundly upstairs, but Harry's mind refused to rest. There was something about this case, something that didn't sit right. A string of fires had been breaking out across the countryside. Magical fires. The kind no Muggle extinguisher could douse. The Aurors had been sent to investigate, and each time they found the same sign. A patch of scorched earth and a single silver scale, long as a man's hand and glittering like starlight. Hermione had said it was impossible. Dragons of that kind, Serpentis argentum, had gone extinct before Hogwarts was founded. Yet the evidence was irrefutable. Someone or something was summoning creatures that should no longer exist. Harry drew his wand and turned it idly between his fingers. For years now he had thought the worst was behind him, that dark lords and cursed relics belonged to another chapter of his life. But lately, he'd begun to feel the weight of unseen eyes upon him once more, as though the shadows themselves remembered his name. An owl hooted outside, breaking his thoughts. With a soft rush of wings, a tawny bird landed on the sill, a parchment tied to its leg. It bore the seal of the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Potter, it read in the tidy handwriting of Hermione Granger Weasley. Meet me tomorrow at dawn in the Highlands. Coordinates enclosed. Bring your wand and your patience. Harry smiled faintly. Trust Hermione to sound both commanding and exasperated at once. He read the coordinates, committed them to memory, and glanced toward the staircase. Ginny stirred in the next room, murmuring something in her sleep. He whispered a charm to dim the lights and turned once more toward the window. Far to the north, the horizon glowed faintly red, just for a moment, like the breath of a slumbering dragon. By morning, the wind had changed. Thick clouds gathered over the moors and rain fell in sheets. Harry arrived by apparition, boots sinking into wet moss. The air smelled of smoke and rain and something else, something faintly metallic. Hermione was already there, her cloak drawn tight, hair plastered by the drizzle. She handed him a steaming flask. "Tea," she said briskly. "You'll need it." "Thanks," Harry said, taking a sip. "So what's so urgent?" Hermione pointed toward the hill. "Up there." Ron surveying the site. "You'll want to see this." They climbed the narrow path, boots crunching on gravel. The hillside opened to a scorched clearing, blackened trees standing like skeletal fingers. At its center lay a great crater still steaming, and within it a vast silvery shape, a dragon's skeleton, Its bones shimmered faintly as though coated with frost. The skull was intact, its eye sockets deep as wells. Around the remains were strange markings burned into the ground, runes older than Hogwarts, perhaps older than magic itself. Ron Weasley stood nearby, wand raised, frowning. "Never seen anything like it," he said. "Bones are ancient, but the burn marks are fresh. It's like something woke it up and then killed it again." Hermione crouched. "Not killed," she murmured. "Bound. Someone's trying to control them." Harry knelt beside the skull. The dragon's jaw was partly open, and between its fangs glimmered something, a shard of crystal, black as obsidian and pulsing faintly with inner light. He reached toward it, but Hermione caught his wrist. "Careful," she warned. "It's not a relic, it's a tether. Whoever placed that can summon the dragon's spirit back to life." Harry straightened. "You're saying someone is raising dragons from the dead?" Hermione nodded grimly. "And not just any dragons, the Draconis line. There's only one place in Britain that still bears that name, the old Dracona estate. No one's lived there in centuries." Ron snorted. "No one alive, maybe." The rain fell harder. In the distance, thunder rolled like the beating of colossal wings. Harry looked toward the darkened hills and felt that same unease stirring once more. "Then that's where we're going," he said. And far above them, hidden in the clouds, something vast and winged stirred. A single drop of molten silver fell from the sky and hissed into the mud below, leaving behind a faint spiral of steam. The dragon had awakened. The journey to the north was long and storm-tossed. Wind howled across the highlands, sweeping mist over the glens and moors like shrouds of pale silk. Harry, Hermione, and Ron traveled by broom, cloaked against the rain, their wands lit faintly to cut through the murk. They had followed the trail of scorched soil and broken stone for hours, winding ever deeper into the wilderness where no road dared to go. Even Hermione, who prided herself on knowing every inch of wizarding Britain, admitted she had never seen these lands on any map. "Honestly," Ron grumbled, clutching his broom tighter as a gust nearly blew him sideways. "Why do all the cursed manors and haunted ruins have to be up mountains? Can't evil ever take a holiday somewhere flat?" "If you think the climb's bad, just wait until you see what's waiting for us at the top." Harry didn't answer. His eyes were fixed ahead. Through the shifting mists, a shape was forming, vast and jagged, like the bones of the earth thrust skyward. Towers, crumbling but proud, rose against the clouds. The manor loomed over the valley like a watching creature, silent, ancient, and alive. The Dracona estate. They landed on the old stone causeway before the gates. Iron bars twisted in the likeness of wings stretched across the entrance, and when Harry approached, the gate creaked open of its own accord. A warm gust of air flowed out, carrying the scent of ash and something far older, dragon musk. "Blimey," Ron muttered, brushing rain from his face. "Doesn't seem all that abandoned to me." Inside, the courtyard was overgrown but alive with strange magic. Blue flames flickered in the sconces, burning without smoke or heat. Stone gargoyles watched from their perches, eyes glinting like molten gold. The great doors stood ajar, and from beyond them came the faint echo of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and unmistakably human. A figure emerged from the shadows. She was tall and pale, her hair black as midnight, falling in silken waves over robes of deep emerald. Around her neck hung a pendant shaped like a dragon's fang. Her eyes were silver, not gray, not blue, but the color of starlight reflected on a blade. "Welcome," she said softly, her voice smooth as water. "You've come a long way, or Potter." Harry's wand was in his hand before he realized it. "You know who I am." A faint smile touched her lips. "Everyone in this world knows who you are, but you needn't fear me. I am Lady Selene Draconis, mistress of this estate, guardian of the last dragons of Britain." Hermione's eyes widened. "That's impossible. The Draconis line vanished centuries ago." Selene tilted her head. "So the Ministry likes to claim. They hide, sleep, and sometimes, when the world forgets them, they wake again." She turned, beckoning them to follow. "Come, there is much you must see." The entrance hall was vast, lined with portraits whose painted eyes followed them silently. Some depicted fierce wizards clad in dragon-hide armor, others of beasts coiling through flame. At the far end stood a hearth large enough to roast a hippogriff, its fire burning silver white. Above it hung an ancient banner, Draco Custos, the Dragon Guards. Selene stopped before it, her gaze distant. "My ancestors were keepers, not killers. When men feared dragons, they offered them sanctuary. We spoke the old tongue, the language of flame and wind, but the world changed. Wizards hunted what they could not control, and so we hid." Harry studied her carefully. There was truth in her tone, but also something veiled, an echo of power that made his scar tingle faintly, though it had not burned in years. Ron broke the silence. "If you're a keeper, then how do you explain the fires? The attacks?" Selene turned her eyes on him, calm and unreadable. "Because the dragons are being provoked. Someone has stolen a relic of my house, the heart of Fafnir. It commands the will of dragons. Without it, they are lost, maddened. They burn whatever they touch." Hermione frowned. "The Ministry found traces of dark magic at every site. Are you saying someone's using that relic to control them?" "Yes," Selene said softly, "and I intend to stop them." Harry folded his arms. "Why call yourself their mistress, then? Why hide out here instead of coming to the Ministry?" Selene's gaze darkened. "Because the Ministry is not as pure as it once was, or Potter. There are those among your ranks who would use dragons as weapons. I know their names. And so do you." A silence fell. Outside thunder rolled again, echoing through the ancient halls. Hermione's eyes narrowed. "You mean the rogue faction? Magical Enforcement Division, the ones experimenting on magical creatures?" Selene inclined her head. "They call themselves the Ashen Circle. They killed my brother. They will not have my dragons." Harry's grip tightened on his wand. The Ashen Circle had been whispered about for months. Aurors gone rogue, obsessed with turning ancient magic into tools of control. The Ministry had denied their existence, but if Selene spoke truth... "Show me the dragons," Harry said at last. Selene regarded him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, but be warned. Once you see them, there's no turning back." She led them down a spiral stair into the heart of the manor. The air grew warmer, tinged with sulfur. The walls glimmered faintly, pulsing with runes that shifted like living flame. Then the passage opened into a vast cavern roofed with crystal and echoing with deep, rhythmic breathing. Harry froze. Before him lay 3 dragons. They were smaller than the ones he'd seen at Gringotts, yet no less magnificent. Sleek creatures of silver and black, their scales rippling like liquid moonlight. Each bore markings along their wings, runes that burned with faint blue fire. One of them raised its head, and its eyes, ancient, intelligent, met Harry's. Selene stepped forward, resting a hand upon its snout. "This is Nymeria," she said softly. "Daughter of the last wild brood. She trusts few, but she knows an enemy from a friend." The dragon exhaled, and a warm gust rippled through the chamber. Hermione whispered, awed, "They shouldn't exist. Every record says the last silver dragons died out in the 14th century. Selene smiled faintly. "History is written by those who need closure, but magic never dies. It only hides." Ron, keeping a careful distance, muttered, "Right. Hiding in a cave under a haunted castle. Perfectly normal." Harry couldn't help a small smile, but his eyes were fixed on the dragons and on Selene. Something about her calmness. The way the "Why show us this?" he asked quietly. "Why trust us?" Selene turned toward him. "Because you know what it is to be hunted for what you are, and because when the time comes, I will need an Auror who still remembers what justice feels like." A rumble shook the cavern. Dust fell from the ceiling. Selene's eyes widened. "No, they found us." From above came a crash, splintering wood, shouting voices, spells striking stone. The walls flashed with red light. Hermione drew her wand. "The Ashen Circle?" Selene nodded grimly. "They've come for the dragons." The dragons stirred, wings unfurling. Nymeria roared, a sound that split the mountain. Flames burst from her throat, licking the stone. Harry raised his wand, his heart pounding. "Then we'll hold them off." Selene's eyes glinted silver in the firelight. "You'll have to do more than that, Auror Potter." And as the ceiling above them shattered and figures in black cloaks descended through the smoke, Harry realized the battle for the dragons had begun. The ceiling burst apart in a storm of stone and fire. Shards rained down as the great cavern trembled, and through the settling dust, a dozen dark figures descended. Their cloaks bore no insignia, yet the air around them crackled with a power that was unmistakably dark. Masks hid their faces, iron and silver, fashioned in the likeness of dragon skulls. The Ashen Circle. "Protect the beasts!" Selene's voice cut through the roar. Her wand flashed, sending a barrier of silver flames sweeping across the chamber. The intruders struck it at once, spells colliding in showers of sparks. The dragons reared, wings scraping against the ceiling, their roars shaking the mountain to its roots. Harry was already moving. "Ron, left flank," he shouted. "Hermione, cover Selene." Bolts of crimson light burst from his wand. One masked assailant fell, another dodged aside. A third aimed at the dragons, and Harry deflected the curse with a shield charm just in time. It splintered against the stone in a hiss of smoke. Hermione conjured barriers that glowed pale blue, her face grim with focus. Ron countered curses with a fierce energy born of old battles. But the attackers kept coming, relentless and silent. Their leader stepped forward, a tall wizard whose mask gleamed with runes. His voice echoed cold and resonant. "Hand over the relic, Lady Draconis," he said. "You cannot hide it forever. The heart belongs to the Ministry." Selene's laughter was sharp and bitter. "The Ministry, or the cowards who seek to control what they fear?" The man raised his wand. "So be it." The next moment was chaos. Spells rained down in all directions, streaks of green, red, and silver. The dragons shrieked, their fire turning the air molten. One of the intruders fell screaming into the pit below, but two others drove their wands into the ground, tracing symbols that glowed crimson. Hermione gasped. "Containment runes! They're trying to bind the dragons!" Harry's stomach twisted. "Then we stopped them." He sprinted forward, sliding behind a fallen pillar. His wand flicked, and with a whispered expulso, the runes shattered in a thunderclap. One of the masked figures staggered back, his wand flying from his hand. Harry seized the opening, disarmed him fully, and sent him tumbling into the shadows. But amid the fray, the leader reached for something, a small black crystal that pulsed like a heart. Celine's eyes widened. "No, that's mine!" The man pressed the crystal to his chest, and a surge of light engulfed him. The chamber shuddered. When it cleared, his eyes burned silver. His voice deepened into a snarl. "The heart of Fafnir answers me now." The dragon screamed. Ymera thrashed, her wings slamming against the walls. Harry felt the pull of magic twisting through the air. The heart was calling to the dragons, enslaving them. Celine ran forward, her robes streaming. "Stop! You'll tear them apart." The man's laugh echoed hollowly. "They are tools, nothing more. With their fire we will forge a new order, one the Ministry can no longer deny." Harry aimed his wand. "You'll forge nothing but your own grave. Stupefy." The curse struck, but the leader barely flinched. The heart's energy shimmered around him like armor. He raised his wand, shouting a spell in the ancient dragon tongue, words that cracked like thunder. The cavern blazed with light. Harry was thrown backward, striking the wall hard. His vision blurred. He saw Hermione crouched beside Ron, who was clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. The dragons were convulsing, eyes glazed white. Selene knelt before them, both hands pressed to the ground, chanting through clenched teeth. Flames surged upward in a blinding column. For an instant the world seemed to collapse into fire and sound. When the light faded, Selene was on her knees, breathing hard. The leader of the Ashen Circle had fallen, burned, unmoving, the crystal dark in his hand. The dragons lay still but breathing, their scales dimmed. Hermione ran to Celine's side. "Are they alive?" Celine said faintly. "But the bond is shattered. The heart's power can't be destroyed, only sealed again." She turned to Harry. "You can help me do it." He nodded. "Tell me what to do." Celine reached for the fallen relic. Its black surface glowed faintly, pulsing with residual life. "You must lend your wand's strength to mine. Together we'll bind it to a place it can never be found." Harry crouched beside her. Their wands crossed over the crystal, and she began to chant in the ancient tongue. The words were heavy, resonant, full of the same magic that filled the dragon's blood. Harry followed her rhythm, adding his own power to hers. The air thickened, the relic shuddered, then cracked, releasing a surge of dark smoke that screamed like a dying thing. Light burst from the fissures, pouring into the stone floor, sinking deep until nothing remained but silence. Celine slumped forward, pale but alive. "It's done," she whispered. "The heart sleeps again." Ron leaned on a broken column, wincing. "Could have fooled me. That nearly took the mountain with it." Hermione conjured bandages, muttering, "That's putting it mildly." Harry helped Celine to her feet. "What happens now?" Her eyes, weary yet fierce, met his. "Now I vanish. The dragons need a new refuge, somewhere even darker than this place. If I stay, the circle will come again." He frowned. "You're running?" "I'm protecting them," she replied softly. "Would you chain them in cages under Ministry control? You've seen what your own kind would do." Harry hesitated. He thought of the power he'd just felt, the greed behind those masked faces. "No," he said finally. "But if the circle returns, if you need help, send word." A small smile touched her lips. "Perhaps I will. Or perhaps I'll send a dragon instead." She turned toward the cavern. Nemera stirred, her wings folding around Celine like a cloak. Flames flared briefly, and in the next instant they were gone, vanished into the dark. The silence that followed was vast and heavy. Only the drip of water echoed through the broken chamber. Hermione sighed. "We'll need to report this carefully." Ron groaned. "And explain to Kingsley how a whole mountain nearly collapsed?" "Brilliant." Harry didn't answer. He looked to the spot where Celine had stood, where the last spark of silver flame still lingered on the stone. Outside, dawn had begun to break. The storm was passing. As they climbed back toward the surface, light streamed through the cracks in the ruin, soft and golden. For a moment, Harry thought he heard wings overhead, a great shadow sweeping across the sun. When they emerged, smoke drifted lazily into the air, and in the far distance a single shape rose against the sky, a dragon gliding toward the northern peaks. Ron squinted. "Reckon we should tell the Ministry about that?" Harry smiled faintly, shaking his head. "No, let them sleep. Some secrets are better left in the clouds." And as the dragon vanished into the morning light, Harry felt a strange peace settle over him, a quiet understanding that though the world was still mending, some pieces of its old magic were meant to survive. For in the high, uncharted skies of Scotland, the mistress of the dragon estate still watched, and the last dragons of Britain still flew. The following weeks passed in uneasy silence. The Ministry called the Highland Fire an unregistered magical disturbance, and the official reports made no mention of dragons, relics, or the Ashen Circle. Yet everyone who had stood in that cavern carried the truth like a secret scar. Harry returned to London, to the steady hum of Ministry corridors and the endless shuffle of parchment, but the air in those halls felt heavier than before, weighted with the scent of deception. Whispers drifted through the Auror department, talk of resignations, reassigned cases, and a handful of officials who had quietly vanished overnight. Hermione, as deputy head of magical law enforcement, seemed constantly occupied with calming the press, negotiating with the Wizengamot, and deflecting questions from departments that probed too close to the truth. Harry saw her less often, though when she did appear, she looked weary but resolute. Ron returned to his work at Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, claiming he'd had enough near-death and Ministry meetings for a lifetime. But Harry knew that beneath Ron's jokes, the memory of the Ashen Circle's cruelty still lingered. As for Harry, sleep had become a stranger. Each night he dreamt of wings, vast silver wings slicing in those dreams. A woman's voice called his name from somewhere far away, soft as an echo. "Auror Potter, you still owe a promise." He tried to tell himself it was just memory, yet sometimes when he looked north from his office window, he thought he saw something moving beyond the clouds. One evening, long after the Ministry lamps had dimmed, a small black envelope appeared on his desk. No seal, no sender. The parchment inside was folded with care, and upon it, in a hand that gleamed faintly silver, were 4 words: "They are hunting again." Harry's heart sank. He didn't need to ask who they were. He left the office at once, the letter burning faintly in his pocket. He met Hermione at her home before midnight, and her face turned grave as she read it. "I thought we dismantled what was left of the circle," she said quietly. "So did I," Harry replied. "But Celine warned me they'd come again." Hermione sighed, rubbing her temples. "The Ministry can't know, Harry. Not until we're sure who's behind this. if there are sympathizers inside. I know, he said, his tone low. We'll go ourselves. And so it began again. Their search led them first to the northern coast, where fishermen had reported seeing burning clouds over the sea, then to a mining town where an entire shaft had collapsed under strange, trembling heat. Each place bore the same mark, scorched stone, in the shape of a wing, faintly glowing silver when touched by wanlight. The dragons, Hermione murmured in awe one night as they camped on a cliffside. They're not hiding. They're warning us. Something's driving them south. Harry gazed at the horizon. Or something's chasing them. That night as they slept, a sound woke him. A low, distant hum like thunder, but softer, almost melodic. He rose, wand drawn, and stepped outside the tent. The air was still, the stars bright and sharp. Then he saw it. A silhouette moved against the moon, a dragon, its scales shining like liquid mercury. Upon its back a lone figure rode, her hair streaming behind her like a banner. Celine. The dragon dipped low, circling once before landing upon the cliffs. Its talons struck sparks from the stone. Harry felt the familiar rush of awe and unease as Nemira's great head lowered to the earth, her eyes like twin suns. Celine dismounted and approached, her cloak trailing in the sea wind. "You came?" she said softly. "You asked," he replied. Her silver eyes caught the moonlight. "The circle rebuilds faster than I feared. They've found fragments of the heart. Not enough to control dragons, but enough to summon them. And not all dragons answer kindly." Hermione joined them, clutching her cloak against the cold. "Fragments? I thought we sealed it completely." Celine shook her head. "You sealed the core, but its shards were scattered long before our battle. Each piece still remembers the call of fire." Ron, who had arrived the previous day at Hermione's insistence, groaned. "Of course it does. Why can't cursed artifacts ever forget?" Celine's lips twitched faintly. "Because magic remembers what men forget." She turned toward the sea. "They're gathering at an island beyond these waters. Old ground, unmarked, uncharted. The place my ancestors once called Drakavale. The circle means to reforge the heart there." Harry's stomach tightened. "Then we stop them." Celine nodded slowly. "You'll need more than courage, Auror Potter. You'll need trust." "What do you mean?" Hermione asked. Celine glanced at Nemira, whose breath shimmered like molten mist. "The dragons have chosen. If you would face the circle, you must fly with them." Ron's eyes widened. "You mean ride? One of those?" "Only those they accept," Selene said. "A dragon carries no coward and no liar. If your heart falters, you will fall." Harry met her gaze. "Then tell them to test me." A long silence followed. Then Selene raised her hand. Nemira turned her gaze upon Harry, piercing, ancient, searching. The ground trembled faintly as she lowered her head. Harry stepped forward, feeling heat radiate from her scales. Her breath smelled of ash and rain. Slowly, he placed his palm upon her snout. A deep hum resonated in the air, not sound, but vibration. A wordless question. "Are you worthy?" He thought of all he had seen, the fire of battles past, the pain and triumph that shaped him. And he answered, not with words, but with steady resolve. The dragon's eyes softened. A pulse of light spread across her scales. "She accepts you," Selene said quietly. "You'll fly at dawn." The hours that followed blurred into fevered preparation. Hermione deciphered old maps by wand light. Ron packed their gear with muttered complaints. Selene spoke in low tones to Nemira and the other dragons waiting beyond the cliffs. When dawn broke, the horizon blazed crimson. The sea shimmered like molten gold. Harry climbed onto Nemira's back, feeling her muscles shift beneath him, immense, alive, thrumming with power. Hermione rode behind Selene upon a smaller dragon named Vorin, while Ron, after some persuasion and much protesting, mounted the third. Arctus, a pale blue beast with skeptical eyes. "Hold tight," Selene called, her voice carrying above the wind. "They rise fast." The dragons unfurled their wings. A roar split the sky, and then they were airborne, soaring higher and higher until the cliffs fell away and the clouds swallowed them whole. For the first time since the war, Harry felt truly free. The world stretched endlessly below, the sea a vast mirror, the wind sharp and pure, but the beauty of flight gave way to unease as storm clouds gathered ahead. Within their churning depths, flashes of red light flickered, spells, burning sigils, and the dark silhouettes of men. Selene's voice, "They're already at Dracovale." Lightning split the sky, revealing the island below. Black cliffs, jagged towers of rock, and a ring of fire encircling its heart. Within that circle stood the remnants of the Ashen Circle, their wands raised toward a glowing stone altar. Harry's jaw tightened. "Then this ends now," Nymeria roared, folding her wings and plunging toward the storm. The other dragons followed, flames spilling from their jaws as the sky erupted with light. And as the first spells rose to meet them, Harry drew his wand, ready to face once more the fire and the darkness that refused to die. The storm over Dracovale broke like a battle cry. Lightning split the sky in blinding arcs, and thunder rolled across the sea like the march of 1,000 drums. Dragons tore through the tempest, their wings slicing the clouds apart, their roars mingling with the wind. Harry clung to Nemira's neck, the air whipping past him in fierce gusts. Every muscle in his body trembled with the strain of holding on, yet the fire in his chest burned brighter than fear. Below, the island gleamed. Black stone veined with molten fire, its cliffs jutting like broken fangs from the churning sea. He could see the enemy now, dark figures scattered across the plateau, their wands raised toward the heavens. Circles of runes blazed around them in crimson and violet light, and at the center of it all stood a tall spire, half ruined, crowned by an altar of obsidian. There, the fragments of the heart pulsed like dying embers waiting to be reborn. Selene flew beside him, her dragon Vorin banking low, silver scales flashing in the storm light. Her voice cut through the wind, fierce and clear. "They're binding the storm itself. We must break the circle before the heart awakens." Hermione, riding behind her, shouted back, "How many of them are there?" "Too many," Selene replied grimly. "But if the heart ignites, even one would be enough." Ron's voice came faintly. "Then let's make sure none of them walk away with it." The dragons dove. Fire burst from their throats, white, silver, and blue, streaking through the rain like comets. The plateau exploded in flame. The runes faltered, and several of the dark wizards fell, screaming, their robes ablaze. But the leader of the circle, a masked witch cloaked in crimson, raised her wand high. "Protego Infernalis," she cried. A dome of black fire erupted from the altar, swallowing the blast. The dragon's flames splashed harmlessly against it, hissing and dying. The heart pulsed brighter within, its fractured surface glowing with veins of molten light. Selene's face hardened. "She's using the shards to feed the shield," We'll never break through from above. Harry leaned low against Namira's scales. Then we'll go under. The dragon understood. With a furious cry, she folded her wings and plummeted. Rain turned to mist around them as they fell. Then, at the last instant, her wings flared open and she skimmed the waves. Harry aimed his wand downward, shouting, "Bombarda Maxima!" The sea exploded. A wall of water crashed against the island, smashing into the lower cliffs. Cracks split the black stone. Steam hissed where seawater met magma. Hermione followed suit, her spell amplifying the surge. Together, their blasts tore a breach in the island's side, revealing a tunnel that led deep beneath the altar. Celine's eyes flashed silver. That passage leads to the Forge Chamber. The heart was born there centuries ago. Then that's where we end it, Harry shouted. The dragons wheeled and descended through the gap. Darkness swallowed them whole. The air inside was hot and dense, shimmering with the breath of ancient fire. Walls of obsidian glittered faintly, etched with runes that whispered as they passed. The chamber opened into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its heart burned a lake of lava, its light casting the walls. Chains hung from the ceiling, each the thickness of a man's arm, their ends embedded in the rock like anchors. Celine dismounted first, her boots striking the stone. This was the birthplace of the first Dracona dragons, she said, her voice almost reverent. My ancestors forged their bonds here, sealing dragonkind and wizardkind as one. Hermione knelt beside a circle of runes carved into the floor. These markings, they're identical to the ones on the heart. Whoever reforges it here could awaken every dragon in Britain. Ron whistled low. Brilliant. So all we have to do is stop a secret cult, destroy an ancient relic, and not die in a volcano? Easy. But before anyone could reply, the ground trembled. From above, a voice echoed, cold, triumphant. Too late, Potter. They looked up. The crimson-masked witch descended the stairs, flanked by her followers. Lightning crackled from her wand. The heart calls to its home, and I have answered. She raised her hand, and a shard of the relic hovered before her, black glass veined with molten red. It pulsed in rhythm with the lava below. Celine's eyes blazed. You don't know what you're unleashing. Oh, I do, the witch hissed. A power beyond blood or law, a world reborn in flame. The shard flared. The cavern shook violently, and from the molten pool shapes began to rise. Wings, claws, and eyes of burning gold. Not dragons, but echoes of them. Spirits forged of heat and fury, roaring as they took form. Harry stepped forward. Hermione, containment circle now. She moved swiftly, her wand sketching sigils in the air. Runes flared blue, weaving a barrier between the phantoms and the living, but cracks appeared almost at once. They're too strong, she cried. Celine advanced, her voice rising in the old tongue. The dragons above echoed her call, their roars shaking the very air. One by one, the fiery phantoms turned toward her, hesitating. For a heartbeat, it seemed. Then the witch screamed, Ignis Domina! The shard split open like an eye, releasing a torrent of blinding light. The chamber filled with flame. Harry threw himself forward, shield charm blazing, but the force hurled him backward against the wall. His wand flew from his grasp. Through the haze he saw Celine and the witch locked in a struggle of wills, silver and crimson light colliding between them. The dragons above bellowed, their roars echoing like thunder. Hermione crawled toward him, coughing. Harry, the barrier, if it collapses... He forced himself up, gripping his wand. Then we finish this now. He aimed at the shard, focusing every ounce of his will. Confringo. The spell struck true. The shard shattered, exploding in a burst of white fire. The witch screamed as the flames engulfed her, her body dissolving into sparks. The phantoms wailed and vanished. The lava subsided, dimming to a dull glow. When the light faded, the cavern was silent once more. Celine stood near the edge, her robes torn, her hair matted with ash. The runes along the walls had gone dark. "It's done," she whispered. "The heart's power is spent." Hermione exhaled, trembling. "Let's hope it stays that way." Ron lowered his wand. "If it wakes up again, I'm moving to the Muggle world. No more dragons, no more volcanoes." But Harry's gaze remained on Celine. Something about her still burned, not with rage or victory, but with grief. "You lost someone here, didn't you?" he asked softly. She didn't answer for a long moment. Then she turned toward him, eyes glistening faintly. "My brother. He was the first to bear the heart. It consumed him. I swore no one would suffer that fate again." Harry nodded. "Then maybe it's finally over?" Celine looked upward, where the faint light of dawn filtered through cracks in the cavern's ceiling. "No, Potter. So long as greed exists, someone will always seek the fire. But tonight, it sleeps." Nemera's voice rumbled above them. The dragons had returned, circling the mouth of the cavern like silent guardians. Celine raised her hand toward them. "They await us. Come." As they climbed back to the surface, the sea wind swept the smoke away. The storm had broken, leaving the sky washed clean and pale. From the cliffs, they watched the dragons rise into the dawn. 3 great shadows wheeling above the waves. Their cries were mournful yet proud, echoing across the endless sea. Selena mounted Nymera once more, her cloak billowing behind her. "Farewell, Auror Potter," she said. "Guard your world well, for mine must remain unseen." And with that she soared into the light, her dragons following in graceful silence. Harry watched until they vanished beyond the horizon, the sun glinting off their scales like falling stars. Only then did he speak, his voice quiet but sure. "She's right," he murmured. "The fire never dies. It just waits for someone brave enough to face it." Hermione smiled faintly. "Then it's a good thing the world still has you." He said nothing, but as the waves crashed below and the wind stirred his hair, Harry Potter felt something stir within him once more. A spark of wonder and the faint, distant echo of wings. Weeks slipped into months, and the memory of Dracovale faded from the whispers of the wizarding world. To most, it was only another rumor, a tale of storms and shadows told in pubs and Auror offices, dismissed with nervous laughter. Yet for Harry, Hermione, and Ron, the battle left marks unseen by the rest of the world. At the Ministry, life resumed its steady rhythm. Files piled high, reports were signed, and memos fluttered like enchanted moths through the corridors. Yet beneath that calm surface, something shifted. Entire sections of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement were quietly reorganized, and several high-ranking officials resigned under vague pretenses of health and personal matters. Hermione, sharp-eyed as ever, watched it all. She knew the Ashen Circle's defeat at Dracovale had not erased them. It had merely scattered them like embers waiting for a breath of wind. Harry sensed it too. He felt it in the odd glances exchanged between certain Aurors, in the way some cases were mysteriously reassigned before he could read them. And sometimes, late at night, he He could almost hear the echo of wings across the city sky, but he said nothing. Not yet. One evening, as the ministry's halls emptied and the clock struck midnight, Harry remained at his desk. The air was still, save for the faint scratching of his quill. He was reviewing the Dracovale file, sealed, classified, marked with a dozen charms of concealment. He read through the lines again, frowning at the missing pieces. The ministry's report had been carefully edited. There was no mention of Selene Draconis, nor of the dragons that had saved them. Even the heart of Fafnir was dismissed as an unidentified magical artifact destroyed in the line of duty. He set the file down, staring at the flickering lamp. "Buried," he murmured, "just like always." A knock broke the silence. He looked up, expecting perhaps Hermione or one of the late-shift Aurors. But the figure who entered was none of those. A woman, tall and cloaked in gray, stepped through the doorway. Her face was hidden beneath a hood, but the air around her shimmered, faintly, as if wrapped in unseen heat. "Who are you?" Harry asked, his wand hand tensing. The woman spoke softly, her voice low and clear. "A messenger." "From whom?" "From one who remembers her promise." She drew back her hood. Silver eyes met his. "Selene," he breathed. She smiled faintly. "I told you I would send word, Auror Potter. The time has come." Harry rose slowly. "What's happened?" Her gaze drifted to the window, where the moonlight spilled across the floor like liquid glass. "The dragons are restless. They sense something, an old stirring in the mountains of the heart may be gone, but its echo remains. Something calls to them." Harry's stomach tightened. "Another relic?" Selene shook her head. "No relic. A being." He frowned. "A dragon?" "No," she said quietly. "Something older." Her eyes held his with grave intensity. "Do you know of the Draconis Aeternum?" Harry shook his head. Hermione might have, but the name meant nothing to him. Selene continued. "Long before men or wands, before Hogwarts was even a whisper, there was one dragon who ruled them all. The first flame. The ancients called her Aeternum, the eternal. She was neither good nor evil, only the balance between them. When the world cooled and magic grew wild, she fell into slumber deep beneath the northern peaks. And now she's waken up? Yes. Something has disturbed her rest." Harry stared. "And you think it's the Circle?" "I know it," Selene replied. "They search for her tomb. To command her would be to control every dragon alive." He felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of such power, of an ancient dragon bound by human hands, was beyond horror. "What do you need from me?" he asked at once. Selene's expression softened. "What I always needed. An ally who still remembers what justice means." He nodded. "Then I'll help. But we'll need Hermione." Selene hesitated. "No. The fewer who know, the safer it will be. The Circle's spies reach farther than even you suspect." Harry grimaced, but he knew she was right. "Then where?" "The Grey Mountains," she said. "A place the maps no longer name. Meet me there at first light. And come alone." She stepped back toward the shadows, her form blurring. "And Harry, bring your courage. The eternal flame wakes hungry." Then she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of smoke and the echo of her words. By dawn, he was already gone from London. He left a note for Ginny. Nothing more than a line about Auror business up north. He apparated to the edge of the Scottish wilderness, where the land rose into jagged peaks. The morning air was cold and sharp. Frost rimed the rocks, and mist clung to the valleys like ghosts, reluctant to leave. He He followed a narrow path winding between cliffs until he reached a plateau. There, waiting beside a circle of standing stones, was Celine. She greeted him with a nod. "You came?" I said I would. "Then we begin." From within her cloak, she drew a small crystal orb. It glowed faintly, filled with swirling light. "This will guide us to Eternum's tomb," she said. "But the path is perilous. The mountains guard her still." They set out together. The climb was brutal, the air thin, the ground slick with ice. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, deep, rumbling growls that made the stones tremble. As they ascended, the sky darkened. Clouds thickened, blotting out the sun. Snow began to fall, first in soft flakes, then in sheets that blinded and bit. Yet Celine pressed on, her steps sure, her magic keeping the cold at bay. At last they reached a vast ridge overlooking a frozen valley. There, half buried into the snow, lay what at first seemed a mountain of stone. But as Harry looked closer, he saw scales beneath the frost, each one the size of a cartwheel, glinting faintly in the dim light. A dragon, but not living. Not dead either. "The tomb of Eternum," Celine whispered. "She sleeps beneath." Harry stared in awe. "It's enormous." "Her dreams keep the mountains warm," Celine said softly. "But if she wakes, the world will burn anew." Before he could speak, a sound echoed across the valley, a crack like thunder. From the cliffs above, lights flared. Dozens of figures emerged, their wands blazing, the ashen circle. Celine's face hardened. "They found us." Harry drew his wand. "Then let's make sure they regret it." The first curse streaked through the air, and the snow erupted in flame. Celine raised a barrier of silver. Harry countered with a sweeping curse, knocking 2 attackers from the ridge. The battle flared bright against the storm. Then, as spells clashed and voices shouted, the ground began to tremble. From beneath the snow came a low, resonant sound, like the heartbeat of the world itself. The frost split, cracks spreading outward in glowing lines of fire. Celine turned, her eyes wide. "She's waking!" The mountain moved. Snow cascaded from the ridges as an enormous shape rose from the valley floor, a creature of fire and ash, wings stretching wider than the sky. Her eyes, twin suns of molten gold, opened at last. Eternum, the eternal dragon, had returned, and the battle for her awakening had only begun. The air split apart with a roar that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the sky. Eternum rose from her frozen tomb like a mountain come to life. Snow and stone cascaded from her wings as they unfurled, vast and terrible, blotting out the dawn. Each movement radiated power older than words, power that made the mountains tremble and the air itself ignite with heat. Harry could only stare, breathless. The dragon's scales shimmered like molten metal, rippling between gold and crimson as fire coursed beneath them. Her eyes, ancient and fathomless, blazed like twin suns behind a storm. Every beat of her heart sent ripples through the ground, shaking loose avalanches on the distant peaks. Celine raised her hand, shielding her face from the wind that surged outward with every exhale of the dragon's breath. "She is magnificent," she whispered, though her voice carried both awe and dread. The ashen circle scattered in chaos. The masked figures who had come to claim her now fled in terror, their spells lost against the storm. One of them, the same crimson-robed witch who had led the assault at Dracovale, stood her ground only for a moment. She raised her wand and shouted a curse that the spell struck Eternum's chest and vanished, as though cast into the sea. The dragon turned her gaze upon the witch, a gaze that burned through flesh, through soul. The woman screamed once, and then nothing remained of her, but ash swept away by the rising wind. Harry felt the ground shift underfoot. The snow melted in streams that hissed and smoked. "Celine!" he shouted above the roar. "What do we do?" Celine's eyes glowed silver, her hair streaming behind her like black fire. "We must calm her. If Eternum wakes in fury, the entire north will burn." "How?" She turned to him, her face pale but determined. The bond between dragon and keeper was forged in blood and magic. "I can reach her, but I will need time. You must hold off the circle while I speak the ancient rite." Harry nodded, though dread coiled in his stomach. Already new figures were appearing on the ridge, more of the ashen circle, their wands glowing crimson as they regrouped. The lure of Eternum's power was too great. They would not retreat while the promise of dominion burned before them. He raised his wand. "Then you'll have your time." The battle began anew. Bolts of light streaked through the storm, red, gold, and blue. The circle fought with desperate fury, their spells fueled by greed and terror. Harry moved like instinct, each motion born from years of battle. Shield charms flared, curses rebounded, and bursts of white fire lit the snow. One of the attackers aimed a curse at Celine's back. Harry deflected it mid-flight, countering with a blast that sent the man sprawling into the drifts. The air shimmered with heat. Every breath burned in his lungs. Celine stood at the cliff's edge, her arms raised toward the dragon. Words older than Hogwarts spilled from her lips, each one heavy with power. The language was not meant for human tongues. It cracked the air like thunder and made the very snow turn to steam. Eternum turned her the fire in her eyes softened slightly, but the air still throbbed with dangerous magic. Then a beam of crimson light pierced the storm. One of the circle's wizards had conjured a binding spell, its energy wrapping around the dragon's foreleg like chains of fire. Another joined him, their spells merging into a web of glowing red. Eternum roared, a sound so vast it shattered the mountainside. Stone rained down. The force knocked Harry to his knees. Celine cried out, her incantation faltering. "They're trying to bind her will. Stop them, Harry." He staggered to his feet, eyes narrowing. Not this time. He ran forward, snow crunching under his boots, wand blazing. The two wizards barely had time to turn before he struck. "Expulso Maxima!" The explosion sent them flying, their spell broken. The bindings dissolved into sparks, but the damage was done. Eternum's fury had fully awakened. The dragon reared, wings unfurling like a living storm. Fire burst from her jaws, sweeping across the ridge in a river of gold. The snow turned to vapor, the rock to glass. The ashen circle screamed as the flames consumed them. Harry threw himself behind a boulder, shielding his face from the heat. "Celine, she's out of control." Celine's reply came faintly through the wind. "Then I must give her something she will remember." She rose into the air, lifted by magic rather than wings, and hovered before Eternum's burning gaze. Her voice thundered through the storm. "Great Eternum, flame of the first dawn, hear the call of your blood." Her pendant, the dragon fang she always wore, burst into light. A beam of silver connected her to the dragon's chest. For a moment the world stood still. The storm paused, the fire dimmed. Eternum's voice rumbled deep and vast, echoing through every stone and every heart. "Blood of my blood, why have you come?" Celine's answer trembled between fear and reverence. "To keep you from those who would bind you once more." "The world has changed," said the dragon. Its greed burns brighter than its stars. Yes, Celine whispered, but there are still those who fight to keep it pure. She turned her head slightly toward Harry. There are still keepers of light. For a long moment, the dragon regarded her in silence. Then Eternum lowered her head until the tip of her snout touched the snow before Celine. The gesture was ancient, a sign of acknowledgement between dragon and kin, but peace did not last. A final defiant shout rose from the surviving circle members. A volley of curses struck the air, one of them hitting Celine square in the chest. The beam between her and Eternum shattered. Celine cried out and fell, her body plunging toward the rocks. "Celine!" Harry shouted. He ran forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Her robes were scorched, her breath shallow. "Stay with me," he urged. Her eyes fluttered open, faintly glowing. "It's all right. She's free now." Above them, Eternum roared, not in rage, but in grief. Her wings spread, stirring cyclones of wind and snow. She turned her gaze upon the circle, and in one breath of fire she ended them all. Then slowly she lowered her head once more, gazing down at Celine's still form. Her massive eye blinked, a single molten tear falling onto the snow beside them, hissing into steam. Her voice, softer now, filled the valley. "Keeper of my kin, your fire burns bright." And with that, the eternal dragon rose into the clouds, her wings blotting out the sun. She circled once, twice, and then was gone, disappearing into the horizon, leaving behind a silence too deep for words. Harry knelt beside Celine, cradling her head. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved her." Her lips curved faintly. "We both did." Snow began to fall again, gentle and clean. The fires, as Harry looked to the sky, he thought he saw the faint outline of wings against the dawn, shining like the promise of a new beginning. The eternal flame had returned to sleep, but the world, he knew, would never be the same again. The snows of the north fell quietly in the days that followed, covering the scars of battle as though the land itself wished to forget. The flames had died, the echoes of dragons faded into memory, and the wind carried only silence down from the shattered peaks. Harry remained there for a time, long after the last embers cooled. He built a small pyre for the fallen ashen circle and burned what was left of their crimson masks. It was not mercy that moved him, but duty. Even those who had been lost to greed deserved an ending that marked their passing from the world of the living. When it was done, he turned his gaze to the ridge where Celine had fallen. Her body had not remained. The moment Eternum vanished into the clouds, the silver light around Celine had flared and lifted her from his arms, dissolving into the same mist that now blanketed the mountains. Whether she had been taken by magic, by spirit, or by the dragons themselves, Harry did not know, but in his heart he felt that she was not gone. On the third morning, when the first pale light of dawn touched the peaks, he found something resting where she had lain. A single silver scale, no larger than his palm. It shimmered faintly when he held it, warm to the touch. Despite the frost, he tucked it into his cloak. By the time he returned to London, the winter had deepened. The ministry's halls glowed with the light of enchanted lamps, and garlands hung in the atriums for the coming Christmas season. Yet Harry found no comfort there. The brightness felt hollow, artificial. He met Hermione in her office where parchment was piled in mountains around her. She looked up the moment he entered and saw the weariness in his eyes. "You found her and lost her again." Hermione rose, crossing to him. What happened, Harry? He told her everything. The awakening of Eternum, the fall of the circle, Celine's final act. Hermione listened in silence, her expression shifting from disbelief to sorrow and finally to quiet reverence. When he finished, she exhaled slowly. Then it's over. For now, he replied. But the circle won't be the last. There will always be someone trying to claim what should never be controlled. Hermione nodded gravely. I'll make sure the Ministry buries every trace of what happened up there. The fewer who know the name Eternum, the safer the world will be. Harry managed a faint smile. You're better at that sort of thing than I am. Someone has to be, she said, her voice soft but resolute. As he turned to leave, she reached out, touching his arm. You've carried this burden long enough, Harry. You deserve peace. He looked at her then, and for the first time in months, the ghost of a true smile touched his face. Maybe one day. Christmas came quietly to the Potter home. Ginny and the children filled the house with laughter, and for a time Harry allowed himself to be swept into their warmth. The tree sparkled with charms that glowed like starlight. The scent of cinnamon and pine filled the rooms. James and Albus raced their enchanted toy brooms through the hallway while Lily scolded them in her mother's tone. Yet even amid the cheer, Harry's thoughts often drifted north to the mountains and the woman whose eyes had shone like molten silver. One night, as the family slept and the house lay silent, he sat by the window, the silver scale in his hand. Moonlight gleamed upon its surface. It seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive. He turned it over, wondering whether it was a relic of the dragons or a gift from Celine herself. Then he heard it, a faint sound almost like distant wings. He looked up sharply, but the sky was, yet something stirred within him, a warmth that spread through his chest, filling him with both longing and calm. He whispered into the night, "Wherever you are, I hope you're at peace." The wind rose gently, stirring the curtains, and for a heartbeat, he could have sworn he heard a woman's voice, soft and distant. "We are." Weeks passed. The snow melted from the streets and winter gave way to early spring. The world moved on, but the past has a way of leaving traces, even when hidden. One morning while reviewing field reports, Harry came across an incident from the far north of Norway. A strange fire seen above the fjords, described by Muggle witnesses as silver lightning that roared like thunder. Hermione appeared at his desk not long after, the same report in her hand. "You've seen it too," she said. He nodded. "Could be anything. Could be her," Hermione said quietly. Harry met her gaze. "Do we tell the Ministry?" She shook her head. "No. Some things are better left as legend." He smiled faintly. "I thought you didn't believe in legend." "I didn't," she said, "until I saw a dragon answer to your call." The following summer, Harry took his family north. He told Ginny it was for fresh air and a bit of quiet, but she knew better. She said nothing, only squeezed his hand as they traveled through the misty valleys. When they reached the highlands, he left them in a small inn by the lake and hiked alone toward the mountains. The air was cool and pure, and every gust carried the faint scent of rain. The path was steep, winding through old pine forests and over streams that sang softly over stone. By the time he reached the plateau, dusk had fallen. The stars flickered to life, one by one, and the world lay still. He stood there for a long while, looking toward the north. The mountains rose like black shadows against the sky, their peaks glowing faintly under the moon. For a moment, he thought he saw something move, An immense, he smiled. Still watching, aren't you? A warm wind swept over the ridge in answer, carrying the faint scent of smoke and something ancient. He reached into his cloak, drew out the silver scale, and placed it upon the ground. For what it's worth, he murmured, "Thank you." The scale shimmered once, then dissolved into light, vanishing into the wind. Far above, a single roar echoed, distant, soft, and full of grace. It was not the cry of anger or warning, but of farewell. Harry stood in silence until the last note faded. Then he turned back toward the path, the stars guiding his way down the mountain. And though the world below would never know what had been saved, or who had done the saving, he felt a quiet certainty within him that some part of Selene Draconis and her dragons still guarded the skies. For in that fleeting roar carried on the night air, he heard again the promise she had made before the fires of Dracovale. When the time comes, Auror Potter, I will need an ally who still remembers what justice feels like. He smiled to himself. Justice, he thought, would always remember her. Spring melted into summer, and though the world of wizards moved on, the old winds of magic never truly rested. Across the farthest reaches of the north, stories began to drift southward. Rumors whispered in half-lit taverns, carried by sailors and shepherds alike. They spoke of silver storms over the sea, of shadows that flew between the clouds, and of a woman cloaked in emerald who rode upon wings of flame. Most dismissed these tales as fancy, but to those who knew, to those who had seen the truth, each rumor rang like an echo of something vast and stirring beyond mortal sight. Harry Potter did not chase these whispers, not yet, but they haunted him, threading their way through his dreams until sleep became restless. The dragons, the circle, Selene, all returned in flashes of fire and wind, their voices tangled in the storm that followed him. He would wake some nights with the faint smell of smoke lingering in the air. Ginny, wise in the way of those who had loved him long enough to know when not to ask, said nothing. She only touched his hand in the dark, and the world steadied again. Still the signs grew harder to ignore. Magical disturbances flared in the north, brief bursts of wild energy gone before Aurors could trace them. Magical creatures migrated strangely. Centaurs whispered to the trees and looked to the horizon as though awaiting a storm only they could sense. Even the goblins, notoriously unmoved by prophecy or myth, shuddered a few of their northern minds, muttering of tremors in the deep. Something ancient was shifting again. It was near midsummer when the letter came, delivered by no owl, no charm, but by wind, slipping through the window of his office like a living thing. The parchment unfurled in the air before him, its ink shimmering silver. Only 2 words were written there. Come north. Harry felt the breath leave his chest. He didn't need to ask who had written it. He rose at once, ignoring the reports piled on his desk, the quiet hum of the ministry below. Within an hour, he had gathered his cloak, his wand, and the silver compass Hermione had once enchanted for him, a tool that always pointed toward the greatest source of magic nearby. That day its needle quivered northward, as though straining to leap from the glass. He left a brief note for Ginny. I have to go. And nothing more. The journey was long. He apparated from hill to hill, valley to valley, until the air grew sharp and thin. Clouds pressed low over the mountains, and the smell of rain clung to the rocks. As he climbed higher, the world below vanished into mist until there was nothing but stone and sky. Then he saw it. Through the fog ahead, a faint light burned, silver and alive, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He followed it upward until he reached a plateau ring, and there, at the circle's heart, stood Selene Draconis. She looked unchanged, though her presence seemed greater somehow, her eyes brighter, her very outline shimmering faintly, as if light bent around her. "You kept your promise," she said softly. Harry managed a breathless laugh. "You keep coming back from the dead. Seems I'm not the only one with bad habits." A small smile touched her lips, then faded. "I did not return as I was. Eternum's fire does not give life, it reshapes it. I am bound to her now, a keeper between two worlds, the mortal one and the realm where dragons dream." He studied her face. "Why call me here?" Selene's gaze lifted toward the northern sky. "Because the dream is fading. Eternum's sleep was never meant to last forever. The world's balance grows thin. The same greed that woke her once is stirring again, only now it spreads faster, hidden in the hearts of men who build power not with wands, but with knowledge." Harry frowned. "You mean muggles?" "Yes," she said. "Their machines cut into the mountains, their ships steal heat from the seas, their weapons scorch. Without magic, the earth groans beneath it. Eternum feels it. She dreams of fire." Harry looked out across the endless range, where storm clouds gathered on the horizon. "You think she'll wake again?" Selene's silver eyes met his. "Not yet, but she stirs. And when she rises, there will be no ashen circle, no ministry, no spell powerful enough to stop her." He felt the old weight of destiny settle on his shoulders again, the same cold certainty that had followed him since boyhood. "Then tell me what to do." "There is one thing that might soothe her, a relic older even than the heart, a shard of her own scale, lost in the age of the founders. It lies buried somewhere beneath the ruins of what men once called the Hollow Vale." Harry's brow furrowed. "That place is forbidden. Even maps avoid it. That is why you must go," Selene said. "Only you carry the trust. Wizards remember your courage. Dragons remember your mercy." He shook his head slowly. "You give me too much credit. I give you only what you've earned." She stepped closer, the scent of smoke and snow around her. "Find the shard. Bring it to me before the first frost of autumn. After that, the balance will break. And if I fail?" Her eyes darkened. "Then the skies will burn." Before he could speak again, the wind rose. The silver light flared, and Selene's form began to dissolve into it. "Wait," he called. "How will I find you again?" Her voice came like a whisper on the wind. "Follow the flame that does not burn." Then she was gone. Harry stood alone among the stones, the echo of her presence fading into the mist. He felt the mountain's silence close around him, heavy and endless. Slowly he knelt, pressing his hand to the earth. Beneath the frost and soil he felt something stir, faint, like the heartbeat of the world itself. He rose, pulling his cloak tighter. There would be no rest now, not until he found the Hollow Vale. Whatever waited there, whatever shard of ancient fire lay hidden, was the only hope left to keep Eternum from waking again. He turned toward the south, the compass in his hand spinning wildly before settling once more toward the north. And though the wind bit hard against his face, he smiled faintly, grimly. "So be it," he murmured. One last quest. The mountain swallowed his figure as he descended into the mist below, unaware that high above, upon a peak unseen by mortal eyes, a vast shadow shifted beneath the clouds. Two eyes, golden and burning, opened briefly, watching him go. Eternum dreamed, and in her sleep, she remembered his name. The road to the Hollow Vale was not marked on any map, nor spoken of in any ministry archive. Those who had tried to reach it in centuries past had vanished into the wild, some swallowed by storms, others turned back. But Harry Potter had long ago learned that the paths most feared were often the ones that mattered most. He traveled alone, save for his wand and the silver compass that pulsed faintly with its own light. The further north he went, the stranger the world became. The air shimmered faintly at dawn, as though some invisible curtain hung between him and the land beyond. Rivers whispered in voices not quite wind, and once, under the glow of a thin red moon, he thought he saw the shadow of wings ripple across the stars. 3 days passed before the land began to change. The mountains fell away into a vast, sunless basin, a wound in the earth where the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Trees grew twisted and dark, their branches heavy with frost, even though midsummer reigned elsewhere. The compass quivered violently, its needle pointing down into the heart of that gloom. "The Hollow Vale," he murmured. He crossed its threshold, and the world fell silent. No wind stirred, no bird called. Even his footsteps seemed swallowed by the mist. It was as though sound itself refused to exist there. He moved cautiously, wand raised. The fog parted in sluggish eddies, revealing glimpses of broken stone and ancient carvings, shattered towers, half buried in the earth, their surfaces etched with runes that glowed faintly at his touch. Each symbol pulsed like a heartbeat before dimming again. The ruins whispered of power, once immense and now forgotten. It felt older than Hogwarts, older even than the founders. Magic from a time when men and dragons spoke as equals. Hours passed. He descended deeper into the valley, following the compass as it pulled him toward a single point of light. Far ahead, the ground beneath him grew warm, then hot, until the snow melted into blackened earth. The smell of sulfur and ash filled the air. Then he saw it. At the center of the vale rose a vast stone archway, its shape too perfect. Through it shimmered a pool of liquid light, neither flame nor water, but something between. Its glow bathed the ruins in hues of silver and crimson, and upon its surface floated a single fragment, a curved scale no larger than his hand, gleaming like the heart of a dying star, the shard of Eternum. Harry approached slowly. Every instinct screamed caution, but something deeper, a pull older than reason, drew him nearer. The air thrummed with raw magic, pressing against his skin. He reached out a hand. The moment his fingers brushed the light, the world changed. The mist vanished, the ruins dissolved. He stood instead within a vast cavern of flame and shadow, surrounded by the echo of wings. Shapes moved through the fire, dragons, their eyes bright as suns, and before him, immense and terrible, rose the figure of Eternum herself. Her voice filled the air like thunder. "Mortal, who dares the Hollow Vale, why have you come to disturb my dream?" Harry steadied himself. "I came to keep you sleeping." Her golden eyes narrowed. "So you would cage me again, bind the fire that gave your kind light?" "No," he said, "but the world isn't ready for your fire. It never was. I saw what happened when men tried to use it." Her breath swept across him, hot as a furnace, but he did not falter. "You speak with courage," she rumbled, "yet courage is not wisdom. You stand before eternity and tell it to wait. What right have you?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "The right of someone who's seen what destruction looks like, who's lived through the ashes of ambition." The dragon's gaze softened slightly. "You speak of war. Yes, and of those who believe they can shape the world through fire. Every age has them. Wizards, kings, dark lords. It doesn't matter. They all want the same thing. Power that doesn't belong to them. Eternum's eyes glowed brighter, and for a moment Harry felt as though she peered straight through him, through every memory. Then she spoke again, her voice softer now. You are not wrong, but fire cannot be unmade. It sleeps, it waits, it hungers. Tell me, child of men, if not through me, how will your world learn balance? He thought for a long moment. Not through control, through choice. The dragon tilted her massive head. You would trust men with choice? I have to, Harry said. It's the only thing that's ever made the difference. Silence filled the cavern. The flames dimmed to embers. Then Eternum laughed, a deep, rumbling sound, like mountains cracking open. You remind me of the first of your kind I ever met. Foolish, stubborn, and unwilling to bow. Her claws lowered until they touched the shard suspended before him. The light flared, brilliant and pure. Then take it, the scale that remembers balance. Keep it safe, keeper of men. When the time comes, it'll choose whether to wake me or to end me. Harry reached out and the shard settled into his palm. It pulsed once, then cooled, turning to solid silver. When he looked up, the cavern was fading. The dragon's forms dissolved into mist, their roars fading into the distance. Eternum's final words lingered as the world shifted back into place. Remember, mortal, the fire is not yours. It never was. He awoke on the floor of the ruins, the archway gone, the valley still. In his hand, the shard gleamed softly, no longer blazing, but alive with quiet light. Harry rose, exhaustion weighing heavy on him. The compass at his belt had cracked, its needle frozen in place. Whatever magic had guided him here was spent. He wrapped the shard in cloth and tucked it close to his heart. Then, with a weary breath, he began the long climb out of the hollow vale. By the time he reached the ridge, dawn had broken. The world below glowed gold and green. Untouched by the darkness he had seen, he paused to look back once more, but the veil was gone, swallowed by mist. Far away, in the high reaches of the sky, something vast moved among the clouds, a shadow too great to be bird or storm. And for the briefest instant, two golden eyes flashed above the horizon, watching. Harry smiled faintly. Still watching, aren't you? The wind answered with a whisper that might have been a sigh or a promise. He turned south again, the shard of Eternum hidden against his chest. Somewhere in the deepening dawn, a dragon's cry echoed once, distant and mournful, before fading into the rising light. And though he walked alone, the air around him felt alive, filled with unseen wings and the heartbeat of an ancient power waiting once more to be called. The hollow veil lay behind him, buried once more beneath mist and memory. But the shard, cool, weighty, and alive, rested against Harry's chest like a second heartbeat. Each time he touched it, he felt a hum of ancient power, neither hostile nor kind, only vast and waiting. He journeyed south through lonely country, where the mountains thinned into rolling moors and forests, heavy with midsummer bloom. Yet even in sunlight, he could not shake the feeling that the world was watching. Birds fell silent as he passed. The air shimmered at the edge of sight, as though some veil of old magic stretched thin between him and everything else. At night, when he camped beneath the stars, he dreamt. In one dream, he stood before a river of fire that stretched endlessly across the sky. Selene waited on the far shore, her hand raised, her eyes full of light. "You've bound her once more," she said, her voice carrying across the flames. "But fire never sleeps, Harry. It only waits." Then she turned, her shape dissolving into wings and silver mist. He woke each time with her words still echoing. He reached the edges of civilization by the 5th day. A small wizarding village stood nestled among the hills, its cottages huddled. Few travelers came that far north, and the sight of him, dust-covered and silent, brought wary glances. But Harry was no longer surprised by such things. Peace had made legends of its heroes, and legends, he knew, were harder to trust than ghosts. He stayed one night at the inn where the fire crackled low and the air smelled faintly of peat. The innkeeper, a stooped man with a beard like snow melt, poured him a tankard of ale and studied him with sharp eyes. "Strange weather these days," the man said at last. "Storms where there shouldn't be storms. The beasts are uneasy." Harry glanced up. "What kind of beasts?" "All kinds," the innkeeper said. "Centaurs wander near the borders again, goblins closing their minds. Even the marrows have gone quiet in the lakes. It feels wrong." Harry nodded. "It's not your imagination." The man hesitated, then leaned closer. "They say it's dragons." "Do they?" "Aye. Great ones, seen high above the clouds, not like the breeds in Romania or the Hebrides. Older, brighter, like living stars." Harry said nothing. He simply sipped his ale, staring into the fire. After a moment, the man withdrew, sensing the end of conversation. When dawn came, Harry left before anyone woke. The sky was pale and cloudless, but a faint rumble drifted from the distant north, a sound too deep and steady to be thunder. He pressed on toward London, traveling by broom and by foot, avoiding the ministry's detection wards. Whatever had begun in the north was not something to deliver into political hands. He needed time to think, to decide what should be done with the shard before anyone learned it existed. By the 8th day, he reached the outskirts of the city. The world here felt smaller, louder, and utterly ordinary. Carriages clattered, muggles hurried beneath umbrellas, and the air smelled of smoke and rain rather than snow and ash. It was almost enough to make him believe the North had been nothing more than a dream. Almost. Her office was buried in parchment as always, yet the moment she saw his face, she rose. "You found it," she said. He nodded and set the wrapped shard upon her desk. Even through the cloth, it glowed faintly, casting silver light over the room. Hermione stared, breath caught. "Merlin's beard," she whispered. "It's real." "It's alive," Harry said quietly. "I don't think it's a weapon. It feels more like a thought or a memory." She reached toward it, but stopped before touching. "What will you do with it?" "I was hoping you'd tell me." Hermione frowned, pacing. "Something that powerful can't simply be hidden, but we can't destroy it either. Not if it's tied to Eternum's life force. If we tamper with it, we risk waking her." "I promised Celine I'd keep the balance," Harry said. "That's all I know." Hermione stopped pacing and looked at him, her eyes full of old worry. "You can't keep carrying these promises alone, Harry." He smiled faintly. "I've been told that before." Before she could reply, the window rattled. A gust of wind swept through the office, scattering parchment. The light dimmed, and for a moment the air shimmered with faint silver mist. Harry turned sharply. "Did you feel that?" Hermione nodded, her wand already drawn. "Something's here." Then the mist gathered, swirling into a shape, a figure tall and robed in emerald. Celine's face formed within the haze, her eyes bright as moonlight. Harry Potter, she said, her voice soft, yet echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. He took a step forward. Selene? She inclined her head. The veil between worlds grows thin. The shard you hold is awakening. Hermione whispered, awakening. The shard remembers Eternum, Selene said. It feels her stirring in her dreams. The world changes too quickly now, the balance falters. You must take it where it belongs. Harry frowned. Where? To the sea, Selene replied. To the place there the shard will sleep until the fire's age comes again. Her image flickered. Go soon before others find you. There are still those who serve the circle's shadow. And then she was gone, the mist dispersing like breath in the cold. Hermione exhaled slowly. The sea. She must mean the northern reach. That's dragon country, Harry. Wild, unguarded. You'll never make it alone. I won't be alone, he said. Not this time. 2 days later, beneath the gray dawn, 3 figures gathered at the edge of the North Sea. Harry stood between Ron and Hermione, the shard glowing softly in his hand. Waves crashed against the cliffs, and the wind whipped through their cloaks. Ron squinted at the horizon. You sure about this? Last time you went chasing dragons, half a mountain exploded. Harry smiled faintly. This time, I'm just putting one to rest. Hermione handed him a small crystal vial. For safety, she said. It'll shield you from magical surges, briefly. If the shard reacts, use it. He nodded, pocketing it. Thank you. Then, without another word, he stepped to the edge and raised his wand. The shard pulsed brighter, answering the sea's endless roar, the air filled with the scent of lightning and ash. The waves parted. A path of glowing water stretched outward, shimmering silver under the rising sun. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. Harry turned to them, his expression calm but resolute. If I don't come back, you will, Hermione said firmly. He smiled once more, then stepped forward, following the path into the heart of the sea. The water closed behind him, sealing the world away. Far below, in the depths where light could not reach, something vast stirred, a hum that was both song and heartbeat. The shard glowed brighter, guiding him downward deeper into the dark, and though he could not see it, far above the clouds a shadow passed across the sun, wings vast and ancient, circling once as though keeping watch. It had only chosen its keeper. The sea embraced him like a living thing, cold and endless. It pressed around Harry as he descended along the shimmering path that wound through the depths. The glow of the shard in his hand lit the water in hues of silver and blue, and though no fish swam nearby, faint shapes flickered at the edges of his vision. Shadows, too large and graceful to be anything ordinary. He could no longer tell how long he had been falling. The light of the surface faded, and still the path carried him downward, deeper and deeper, until the weight of the sea became almost unbearable. The silence here was absolute, broken only by the steady thrum of his own heartbeat and the faint, steady pulse of the shard against his palm. Then the darkness shifted. Before him, rising out of the abyss, loomed a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was no ruin of stone or coral, but a living thing, a vast spiral of black crystal and bone, its walls pulsing faintly as though alive. The air around it shimmered with power older than words. The shard in his hand blazed brighter, tugging him forward. He stepped through the translucent archway, and the world changed. The sea vanished. He stood upon a wide plateau beneath a sky of endless twilight. The horizon glowed faintly red, and the air smelled of rain and ash. All around him rose pillars of obsidian, their surfaces inscribed with runes that glowed like molten gold. In the distance, a vast shape slumbered, a coil of silver and flame stretching farther than sight. Eternum. The dragon's body lay half buried in the ground, her wings folded like mountains against the horizon. She seemed asleep, yet even in rest, her presence filled the air, vast and unyielding. Each slow breath she took rippled through the ground beneath his feet. Harry approached cautiously. His steps echoed faintly in the strange stillness. Celine said this was where dragons first rose, so this must be where the fire began. As he drew nearer, the shard pulsed faster, its light synchronizing with the rhythm of Eternum's breathing. He knelt, holding it before him. "You gave this to me," he said quietly. "You told me to keep it safe, but it isn't mine to guard forever." The air stirred. A voice like thunder rolled across the plain. "You return the gift, child of men?" He swallowed hard. "It belongs to you." A rumble of laughter echoed, deep, slow, ancient. Few return what they could keep. "You carry the burden well." Harry bowed his head. "I never wanted power, just peace." "Peace," said the dragon, "a word mortals carve into the dust between wars, yet you speak it with truth. That makes you rare." Her massive eye opened, filling the world with molten gold. The ground trembled. "You stand again in the place of beginnings. Do you know what you hold?" Harry looked down at the shard. "A fragment of your fire." "More than that," said Eternum. "It is memory itself, the first breath of flame that shaped the world. Within it lies the balance between creation and ruin." Her voice grew softer, though it still echoed through his bones. "When I slumbered, I left it for your kind to test whether they could remember without destroying. Few have. Fewer still have returned it unbroken." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "Then what happens now?" "Now I rest again," she said, "but the shard must remain awake. The world you guard changes faster than fire can follow. When it forgets its balance, the flame must remind it." He frowned slightly. "You're saying it will choose when to awaken?" "Yes," said Eternum, "and it will remember you when it does." The shard in his palm grew warm, its silver light shifting to gold. He felt it sink gently into his hand, through skin, through bone, until it rested within him, a soft glow behind his heart. He gasped, though there was no pain, only a deep, burning calm. Eternum's voice was like distant thunder now. "Because you have lived in shadow and chosen the light, because even in victory you did not seek dominion, and because all fires, great or small, must have a keeper." Her eye closed again. The air began to shimmer. "Wait," he called, but already the world was fading. The twilight sky, the pillars, the dragon's vast form dissolving into gold. Her final words echoed as the sea returned around him. "Guard the balance, keeper of flame, until the dawn comes again." He awoke on the shore at sunrise, the surf lapping softly against the rocks. His clothes were dry, though his hair smelled faintly of smoke. In his chest, where the shard had vanished, a faint warmth lingered, steady as a heartbeat, eternal as breath. Hermione and Ron found him before noon. "Merlin's beard, Harry," Ron said, hauling him upright. "We thought you were dead. You've been gone for 2 days." "2 days?" Harry murmured, blinking against the light. It felt like a lifetime. Hermione crouched beside him, her eyes filled with worry and awe. "What happened?" He hesitated, searching for words. "I gave it back." "Gave it? Harry, what does that mean?" He met her gaze. It means the fire's at peace. For now. Ron frowned. And if it wakes again? Harry looked toward the sea. The horizon shimmered faintly, a single flash of gold beneath the waves. Then it'll have to find me. That night back in London, he stood once more by the window of his home. The city glowed softly below, its lights like scattered stars. Behind him, laughter drifted from the kitchen. Ginny and the children, alive, safe, unknowing of how close their world had come to burning. He closed his eyes. Within him, the faint warmth stirred, neither painful nor frightening, only alive. He could feel the shards hum, its pulse matching his own. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Harry smiled. Still watching, he was somewhere far above. A single spark streaked across the night, a trail of gold that vanished into the clouds. And though the city would never know it, high beyond the storm, the shadow of a dragon passed across the moon, vast, silent, and eternal. Eternum dreamed again, but this time her dreams were calm. The keeper had done his part, and for a while at least, the fire of the world slept in peace. Autumn came softly that year, as though the world itself were weary of storms. The trees turned gold and crimson across the countryside, and the air grew crisp with the scent of rain and burning leaves. To most, it was a season of quiet, the first true peace Britain had known in many years. Yet to Harry, it was the stillness before something vast and unknowable. He felt it sometimes when the wind shifted, or when the firelight flickered strangely across the walls of his home. The faint warmth within his chest, where Eternum's shard had once glowed, had not faded. It pulsed gently beneath his ribs, alive yet patient, as though the flame within him merely waited for the right moment to breathe again. Ginny noticed, of course, she always did. One evening, as twilight deepened and the children's laughter echoed upstairs, she found him sitting alone in the garden. The last light of day gilded the grass, and the air shimmered faintly, the kind of magic that lingered when the world stood on the edge of something old and mysterious. "You're far away again," she said softly, settling beside him. Harry smiled faintly. "Just thinking." "About her?" He hesitated. "About all of it. The dragons, the fire, the things that sleep beneath the world." Ginny reached for his hand, her fingers warm against his. "You've carried enough for 10 lifetimes. It's all right to let go, you know." "I'm trying," he said, "but it doesn't feel finished. There's something still waiting." Ginny tilted her head, studying him. "Maybe it's you." Before he could reply, a sudden gust swept through the garden, scattering the last of the autumn leaves. The light dimmed, and for an instant the air shimmered with a silvery glow, like moonlight caught in mist. From that glow, a voice spoke. "Keeper of Flame." Harry rose sharply. The air before him rippled, forming the faint outline of a figure, tall, cloaked, and radiant. It was not Celine, though she carried the same aura of ancient power. Her face was neither young nor old, her hair dark as the void between stars. Her eyes burned with quiet fire. Ginny stepped back, though she did not scream. Her instincts, sharp as her wand hand, kept her steady. "Who are you?" The apparition inclined her head. "A messenger. I come from beyond the veil of flame, from the realm where dragons dream." Her gaze fixed on Harry. The Eternal stirs once more, not in wrath, but in remembrance. She calls for her keeper. Harry's breath caught. "Eternum?" The woman nodded. "The world changes faster than even her fire can follow. Men forge power from the earth. Metal, lightning, engines of thunder. The magic of dragons fades as new fires rise, cold and without heart. She asks if you will walk the path one last time, to remind your kind that not all fire burns to destroy. Ginny turned to him, her eyes wide but steady. You can't go. You've given enough. Harry met her gaze. Maybe. But if she's calling, it means something's coming. Something we don't see yet. The messenger extended her hand. The door is open only tonight. When the moon touches the horizon, it will close until the end of your age. For a moment, the garden was utterly still. The wind hushed, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Ginny's voice was quiet but fierce. If you go, promise me you'll come back. He smiled, the kind of smile she knew well, equal parts courage and farewell. I always do. Then he stepped forward and took the messenger's hand. The light, when it faded, he was gone. He stood upon a vast plain of flame and shadow. Above him, the sky swirled in colors no human eye had ever named, scarlet and silver and deep, eternal gold. Around him shapes moved, dragons of every kind and hue, soaring and circling in endless grace. Their scales caught the light of unseen suns, and their roars were like the beating of the world's heart. At the center of the plain, upon a mountain of crystal and fire, lay Eternum. She lifted her head as he approached, her eyes vast and knowing. Keeper of flame, she said, her voice resonant as the turning of the earth. You have come. Harry bowed. You called. I couldn't ignore it. The balance shifts again, she said. The fires of men grow without soul, and the breath of dragons fades. But I will not rise this time in wrath. I have learned through you what even eternity forgets, that mercy is stronger than might. Her massive claw touched the ground before him, and from it rose a flame, not hot but soft and living, like the glow of dawn through mist. Take this spark, she said, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. When your kind forgets the warmth of true fire, let this show them again. He reached out. The flame touched his palm and sank into it, leaving no scar, only a faint symbol, a single rune of light that pulsed gently beneath the skin. What happens now? He asked. You return to your world, said Eternum, and when you are gone, another will take your place. There must always be a keeper. Her eyes softened. You have carried this burden with grace, Harry Potter. Few mortals could have done the same. Rest when the time comes. The flame will watch over those you love. A great stillness fell over the plain. The dragons bowed their heads one by one, their wings folding in solemn reverence. The light brightened, and the world dissolved once more into brilliance. He awoke in his garden. The air was cool, and the scent of dew mingled with the faintest trace of smoke. Ginny was there, asleep beside him on the bench, her hand resting lightly over his heart. He looked down. The rune beneath his skin glowed softly, fading as the sun rose. He smiled, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and whispered, I'm home. Above them the sky blushed with gold, and high beyond the clouds, unseen by all but the few who still listened for the old songs, a single dragon flew eastward toward the sun, its wings stretched wide, its roar rolling like thunder across the morning sky. The fire of the ancients was at peace, carried now not in relic or flame, but in the hearts of those who remembered. And so ended the tale of the mistress of the dragon estate, of the keeper who bore the last flame of the world and returned it to the dawn. Yet somewhere in a dream that belonged to both dragon and man, a voice whispered still, when the balance falters, when the cold fire of the new age forgets its warmth, Look to the skies, for the keeper's flame shall rise again.